Some of you have been with us before for these events. This is our spring strategy extravaganza of the Climate Innovation for Adaptation and Resilience Alliance. We're really excited. This year, Earth Day is usually sort of the starting spin of the wind turbine of action for the year, and this year is no different for us. We've spent a lot of energy as we started off the year getting our action agenda up and running, updating our strategy, bringing on and engaging new funding partners and new collaborative partners, accelerating our working groups or collabs, as you'll see them referenced, and much, much more, as you will hear in the next 90 minutes and have an opportunity to engage with us on. And that is really what we hope to have happen today for all of you is an opportunity to engage with us and hear from all of our speakers. So without further ado, I'm very pleased to present the CIFAR Alliance Chair, David Delcer, BFA Global, who will say a few words to kind of introduce our themes today and our most distinguished member keynote speaker to get us rolling. So David, over to you. And now you're muted.
Sorry, I had been muted and I hadn't noticed. Sorry, thanks, Jesse. Well, hi everyone, welcome. My name is David Delcer, and as Jesse was saying, I play the role of the chair at the CIFAR Alliance, and I'm also the Chief Innovation Officer at BFA, where I work. It's a real pleasure to have all of you today, so thanks a lot for joining us. And welcome to our third Earth Day event. So this is becoming something of a tradition. The first one was in 2021, where we announced the creation of a task force that we call DF4CR, Digital Finance for Climate Resilience, which ended up delivering a fantastic framework for action and started creating the momentum that then became CIFAR, right? Last year, in 2022, we announced an expansion of members. I think we were 12 or 11 last year. And we also announced the first Teca Wave to launch innovators in the blue economy in Eastern Africa. This year, we will be discussing a more detailed mission, more members as well, more working groups or collabs, more Teca Waves, and a new partnership we're calling Universal Climate Insurance. So this has been a fantastic journey, and we're very, very grateful for all the support that CIFAR is getting, both time, funding, connections, everything. And I think we believe this underscores the value that a collaboration like this has in tackling such a super complex issue. Briefly on our sort of expanded or more detailed mission, we want to grow as a global network that is advancing climate solutions to benefit people on the planet, with a focus on resilience and adaptation, and empowered by technology and finance, right? We want these solutions obviously to address the needs of the populations that are going to be or are already most affected by climate change, all this while promoting equity and inclusivity, right? And we, from our vantage point, is very much centered on this innovation. We do want to bring a message of hope. We read about climate change, and 9 out of 10 times it's a message of doom, gloom, disasters, and yeah, that is happening, right? But we still believe sincerely that we can build together a better future. Although we need to invent it quickly. We need to support more and more exponential innovators, global and local, because otherwise we just won't catch up with the damage that climate change is going to be causing, is already causing, because climate change itself is an exponential crisis, right? So we see our role as CIFAR as essentially accelerating 3 layers that grow this ecosystem of innovation. The first one is our expertise, our mutual expertise. We're all working through projects in this topic, and we all can teach each other tricks, lessons learned, insights, whatever, right? So that's the first one, expertise and ideas. The second layer that we want to further is the collaboration in a top-down manner among the members in the alliance, because together we can achieve things, we can build things that we couldn't separately, right? We couldn't alone. And then, of course, and perhaps most importantly, we want to support the bottom-up innovators that from the vulnerable communities and for the vulnerable communities are building new solutions. And what we feel runs as a thread through these three layers is collaboration, genuine partnerships, because no one can really do all of this on their own, we think. I'm sure you've all heard about this African proverb of, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. We're really trying to go fast and far together. So I don't know if there's any proverb from another tradition or an African tradition to help with that. Please let us know on the comments. But that's really what we're trying to do here. Partner up so we can go faster and further together. And that is the question I will want to leave you with as we go into the session. How can you partner with the CIFAR Alliance? How can you partner with other members to be just mutually helpful, right? So keep that in mind. And thanks so much again for joining us. And now I'm going to pass the microphone, Jesse, right to Ali, our colleague Ali Schmidt-Fellner from MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth. Welcome, Ali.
Thanks, David. So happy to be here. Great to see a lot of friendly faces and familiar faces, and also really excited to have new faces on the call. So we're excited you're joining us for the roundtable discussion today. As just to build on David's points, the world's greatest challenges are increasingly intertwined. As climate change advances, it is affecting economically vulnerable populations first and hardest, and that's spanning rural, coastal, and urban communities around the world. These communities are navigating intensifying natural disasters like floods and hurricanes, longer droughts affecting crops for farmers, changing fishing populations for farming communities. There's intensifying heat, just to name a few of these incredibly large climate issues. As we transition together to a low carbon regenerative economy, we must also ensure that we're helping people adapt to the impacts of these crises in the short, medium, and long term, and create equitable opportunity for everyone along the way. The only way to address this complex set of challenges is through collective action. So we need innovative approaches and ideas across the economic development community, nature and climate community, and digital innovation community. And also importantly, as David mentioned, including voices from the communities directly affected. So we need these ecosystems to come together to create and scale solutions through partnerships and collaboration. At the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth, where I work, the philanthropic hub of MasterCard, we have been so excited to support and partner with the CIFAR Alliance because we believe that they really have been leading the charge at this intersection, and it's so needed. The CIFAR Alliance is a global network that seeks to advance resilient and tech-enabled climate finance solutions that benefit people and the planet. The Alliance is committed to creating impactful solutions that address the needs of those most affected by climate change, focusing on promoting equity and inclusivity. Working at this intersection of climate and finance, combined with innovation, has the power to change the way we deal with climate change and create a better, more equitable future. So we hope everyone participating today will walk away with a new idea, a new action, a new connection that you can bring back to your work. And we also hope that you will join us through the CIFAR Alliance to advance the work together. I think David made a great point. We are very hopeful about the future and look forward to you joining us along the way. So thanks for joining, and I think I pass it next to Jesse.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Ali, and thanks, David, for kicking us off so well and with such energy and ambition. Just wanted to touch very briefly. Some of you may have seen the annual report for the CIFAR Alliance and our members' work last year. That is available online. I think we'll have a link in the chat in just a minute. We won't take a lot of time with this because I want to get to our next session with the founders and funders stand up lightning round. But please do take a look at that. I guess some quick highlights there. Last year was really a transformational, I would say, year for the Alliance. We became the CIFAR Alliance last year, moving from our foundations as the Digital Finance for Climate Resilience Initiative. Say that 10 times real fast and I'll give you $10. without turning it into another language, which is part of the reason we rebranded last year. The members felt that was an important part of our journey, and one milestone we accomplished. We also added 7 new members. As David had mentioned, we launched the Tech Venture launcher as a collaborative emerging from the CIFAR Alliance with a number of members and funders working together. We raised over 1.3 million in funding for the Alliance activities and projects and events. We launched 7 new working group collabs, produced over 9 major knowledge projects, had 41 partner organizations working with us, and of course, we're co-sponsors of the Resilience Hub at COP27 with generous support from PayPal and others. So just a few highlights from that journey last year, which we really feel has laid the foundation for an exciting move into even deeper action, implementation, innovation, and partnership growth this year, as David and Ali had highlighted. So without further ado, please do take a look at that. But I would like to shift over to our quick stand-up, introduce our founder and funder circle of discussants. We'll do some quick lightning questions, kind of framing questions. These distinguished partner representatives have been deeply involved in the strategy work for this year and the years to come. So we'll ask them to kind of share some thoughts on what excites them in different areas. And then hopefully we'll have a couple of minutes to answer any questions that come up in chat. So we'll start off with our good friend Jackson Love, the global lead of environmental sustainability at PayPal, a true founding and funding partner from the very, very, very beginning of this work. And Jackson, just wanted to maybe ask you to kick us off with some thoughts on, in your view, what differentiates the CIFAR Alliance from other aligned industry efforts? Where do you see new areas and opportunities for partnership and collaboration emerging in our agenda this year?
Amazing. Thank you, Jesse. And thank you, everyone. Really fantastic to be here. I'll try to keep my comments brief since I know we've got a lot of action to come and really want to focus on the inclusion of all the voices that are in this room, which is clearly embedded in the values of this organization. So, we've sort of been reflecting on this along the way, but on the PayPal side, as we were exploring the information, the evidence base, and the stakeholders in the ecosystem who were interested in this intersection of digital finance and climate resilience. Going back 3 years ago now, David mentioned, this is our 3rd Earth Day event. And when we rewind to that time, there really was not a place for this sort of intersectional field of practice yet. And that is, I think, the work that many of you all have been doing now for a number of years. And it is clear that the CIFAR Alliance is a movement whose time has come. And I think part of that is the fact that it is differentiated in its focus on the equity issues of climate, the people and the societal impacts of climate change, and the role of fintech and innovation in bringing solutions to bear that are accessible, affordable, and trustworthy for those who are most in need of them. And I will say that while the long-standing focus on mitigation is essential, and we got to continue to bear down on net zero progress and cutting emissions as fast as possible, I think that in an otherwise somewhat concerning moment in the climate action field, CIFAR is a beacon of hope and optimism and solutions that can really address the adaptation and resilience aspect of the solution space. And I think The hallmarks of the Alliance are those values that we as a group over the last several months have been collectively deciding on. And I feel like this was a very natural process of pulling the threads of CIFAR as a big tent of collaboration and innovation. The bias toward action and calculated yet bold risk-taking. So just a few ways that I think we are differentiated, and I think the momentum speaks for itself here, and the fact that we're standing out. So in terms of the areas for partnership and collaboration going forward, I'm just going to put a pin in that one and build a little bit of suspense for the fireside collaboration chat that's coming up. So Jesse, I'll hand back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson. That was terrific. Thanks for kicking us off. Would love to pass the talking stick now to another dear colleague and funding partner, one of the first, I think, to join, if I'm not mistaken, as we kicked off last year, and an instrumental partner in the TECA venture launcher and in many other areas, Juliet Monroe, Director of Digital Economy from FSD Africa. I believe Juliet is with us. And I wonder if Juliet, you could say a few words about what most excites you as a funder, a veteran funder of the CIFAR Alliance as we move into our action agenda this year, and what expectations do you have for what the Alliance can accomplish together this year and with new partners emerging? Juliet.
Thanks, Jesse. And hi, everyone. Really nice to see you. And I think, yeah, as FSD Africa, we weren't there at the beginning, but we came in as a member, I think, just over a year ago when the platform was already established, but before it transitioned into what we're now seeing as the CIFAR Alliance. And as Jesse, you mentioned, our participation has sort of so far been in partnering on TECA, Catalyst Fund, and a few other activities, as well as participating in the steering committee and various working groups and events. So the question of what excites me, I think 4 things come to mind, and they resonate with what I think Jackson, David, and Ali have already said. But really that the Alliance provides a platform to an expanding network of global organizations that have this common goal and really sort of working in this new practice of catalyzing and scaling innovation for action, as you mentioned, Jackson, particularly for resilience and adaptation. So that network effect, I think, is something that really excites me. Secondly, the perspectives, the fact that while we have this common goal as organizations, we bring different perspectives to the table, be they entrepreneurial, technical, investment focused, research, impact focused, and so on. And I think it's really critical that we have those different perspectives as an ingredient into building an ecosystem that's going to be truly supportive of what we're trying to do as our key goal. I think thirdly, that as a set of organizations combined under the umbrella of the Alliance, that we have incentives, resourcing, and influence to make a real difference, in our practice, if we play our cards right. So we've got a lot of power, I think, as an Alliance to do stuff and to do significant stuff. And I think fourthly, that we're open to change. It's already morphed into the collection of genetically robust cells that existed at the beginning when we weren't involved, and into the organism that it is today. And I think today it continues to evolve, evidenced by this discussion. And I think we, as an Alliance, need to remain agile and adopt an adaptive management approach. I mean, David, you talked about invent quickly. We can't hang around and be clunky about this. We need to be responsible and impactful in a quick way. So I think that's what excites me. I think in terms of expectations, just settling fully into our niche of nurturing the right environment for early stage tech-based innovation. I would add nature to climate in our lexicon, because I think that the whole issue of biodiversity is important, if not a wider sphere of challenges together with climate. So just settling into that niche and allowing those solutions to emerge and flourish by providing that right environment, I think would be great for us to continue to do over the course of the year. And ignition of more and more partnerships. Jesse, you referred to this, scaling up our ambition to proactively collaborate on specific activities and investment, so that by the end of the year, we've got some really significant tangible deliverables to show that combine sort of enterprises formed and scaled, talent applied in the right way, capital crowded in, value added to people in the communities and the businesses that, as you said, David, are kind of really needing to cope with and adapt to climate change. And then obviously, thirdly, and my final point is just that we, in doing those collaborations, that we distill what we learn in the process and we package that in a way that's going to be actually useful, and maximizing the key events that we've got an opportunity to engage in, which this year include the Africa Climate Summit, New York Climate Weekend, and COP28. Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you so much, Juliet, and I'm really grateful for your continued partnership and leadership as we move to ignition. And I think on that theme of ignition, pass the stick to David for a few last comments on what that looks like in terms of how we're building momentum to action and impact this year. What initiatives are you excited about in that ignition trajectory? And then we'll ignite right along to the fire chat session.
Thanks, Jesse. I like Juliet's biology metaphors more than your mechanical ignition and explosion.
All right.
But just this is a small remark. But yeah, thinking of what's new, what are we doing this year? I think Juliet and Jackson already reflecting on some of them. But there's 3 initiatives I'd like to highlight where we're going to be seeing great stuff. We're hoping. The first one I mentioned before briefly, universal climate insurance. I'm not going to steal the thunder from the speakers who will be later talking about it. Nick from BFA and Kelvin from FSD Africa, they're co-leading this initiative. But very briefly, this is a brand new partnership across, I don't even know how many, this is like maybe 15 organizations already, focused on building a voluntary mechanism, but for loss and damage, not for carbon offsetting. So the same way that you can offset your flight by, funding the growth of a few trees, and that offsets your immediate emissions. What about all your historic emissions that you've might have produced up until this point? They're causing damage because they stay in the air, in the atmosphere for over 2 centuries. So could we develop a mechanism for carbon, let's call it carbon high lifestyles, to at least compensate those that are getting damaged, right? While of course reducing those emissions. That's what we want to do with the UCI. The technology is already here. Moving money from place to place is already something that happens all the time. But what I think we need to unlock climate empathy at a global scale, right? And that's what we're just getting started on. So essentially, committed consumers that lead a high carbon lifestyle in the rich world could transfer funds to vulnerable communities affected by climate disasters, right? So we're just getting started with funding from the MedLife Foundation and participation from a broad number. And if this sounds interesting, please just get in touch with us. We're definitely looking for more partners. This is a very ambitious collaboration. Another initiative that we're launching in this case with funding from MasterCard, so thanks Ali, is the Climate Smart Innovation Hub, which is being called by Ali and Tyler. And essentially what we're doing in a nutshell is activating local innovation ecosystems through climathons. So I see Neil from Climate Cake. This is a term we're borrowing from them. And these activations then feed into TECA waves, right? Which is a nice chain of sort of continuation. So the energy doesn't get dissipated, it gets captured. We'll also work on a number of knowledge products. For example, is defining what a climate smart product is to start with. And then we'll be showcasing a range of products from all over the world that we can all draw inspiration from, right? Through some sort of gallery. So I believe we're still looking for a final 1 or 2 members for that working group. Ali, I know you can confirm. If anyone's interested, just drop a line to Ali or me or send us an email. And finally, we're also expecting to launch, to grow the TECA Venture Launcher that was started last year. We want to do more waves. My colleague Shirley, who's here on the video, she's leading TECA, and we're putting our final touches on a new blue wave for Africa with FSD Africa, with Juliet and other funders. And we're also advancing a series of other conversations to launch new waves in new geographies as well. So stay tuned for more news about TECA, but we're very excited to be doubling or tripling that program this year. I don't know, Jesse, if that's exciting enough.
That's pretty exciting, David.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks for teeing us up. And in an effort to innovate my metaphors away from the mechanical, we'll move maybe into the heat lightning round of picking up from Juliet's nature-based theme to introduce the work of the working group collabs. There's a question from Neil about ecosystems, which I think will hopefully be amply addressed either through that conversation or in the breakouts where we get into more of the ecosystem kind of pillars that we're discussing. But with that, I'd like to pass the baton to my esteemed colleague and co-conspirator, Secretariat co-lead Nelly Ramirez, who will introduce the collab lightning chats.
Thank you, Jesse. Happy Thursday, everyone. And as you hear from the different collabs that we'll be sharing with us right now, of course, there's a lot of room to speak about each of the topics that they've been working on. So we encourage you to please participate in the chats. And hopefully also we're going to have breakout sessions. So you get a chance to talk to some of them directly and hopefully build connections. So on this fire chat, let's start with Jane Delcer from Carbon Finance Collab, one of our stellar working groups, who last year had a successful release of the Carbon Finance Opportunity Brief. And we're wondering what output can we see CARFI producing after this opportunity brief this year, and what changes are you guys going through that meets the needs of the original members that joined the CARFI working group, the collab now, and those new members that are exploring the subject of carbon finance.
Thanks, Nelly, and thanks to the Secretariat for the opportunity to talk about the Carbon Finance Collab. I just want to recognize Tyler, who led the opportunity brief, and I believe Tim was also joining the call, who's my co-conspirator on the carbon finance side. And maybe just to answer your question about what comes after the opportunity brief, that's been a looming question for us as well. And we think there's an opportunity for two particular areas building on the opportunities that we laid out for how we can accelerate carbon finance to be more inclusive for smallholder projects in particular and in Africa. And to your question, to your point, Neil, about ecosystem innovation, I think this is one of the areas where we can reference those three opportunity areas. One in particular was around MRV and helping to increase the transparency that will help accelerate the uptake of carbon finance and make it more inclusive. And so building on that, on those three opportunity areas, perhaps a mapping where we can speak to more of looking at the proliferation of these remote sensing tools and approaches for improving MRV that increase transparency, but also reduce costs and time so that we can make it more available to small scale projects. It's hard to assess, right? Same thing with all the different actors coming into the carbon finance space, it's hard to assess who's doing good work. And so there's, through the opportunity brief too, a way that we may go deeper into solutions and speak to what's more inclusive and accessible, the way you were saying it, Jackson, right? Appropriate, accessible, and trustworthy for small scale stewards. And the second area I think is around the adaptation finance for small scale projects. This is an area that makes a lot of sense within the CIFAR focus on adaptation and resilience building. So, how do we have a deeper dive on how we connect those innovation hubs and how we help them connect to smallholder farmers, small scale projects, so that we increase the supply of quality projects. And so within that approach, I think there's the opportunity to speak to the new or evolving carbon stack, right? The tech-enabled carbon stack that's using these new approaches that are more focused on small-scale project development. And it's also an opportunity to speak to where private sector financing can deploy grant capital or investment capital, right? How they leverage one another in a way that we multiply the necessary funding. And one area that we've been exploring is how we can also deploy pilot money in this space. So engaging the partners and the ones that are in the working group that are much more ready to move to do something, take action. Well, how we can deploy pilot money to test some of these hypotheses. One in particular through the working group has been exploring how we can accelerate the supply of carbon, right? Not just accelerate the actors, but what does that mean to increase the supply in the system? And to your final point about our working group and where we're headed, it's been an exciting year, right, Juliet? You were saying that these different perspectives are really valuable and can help us address the needs of the ecosystem. And we have a very diverse membership, and at the same time, we see a divergence of needs. So I think we see two groups coming out of the working group as it is. One is where there are those that are seeking partnerships and trying to help facilitate and connect the dots to take action through partners and partnerships among the members. And the second is more of an information, those who are seeking information or are seeking to learn, how we can create the space and curate the knowledge around carbon finance and make that more available in an open setting. So I think we'll start seeing that segmentation within the collab to better serve the needs of the diverse membership.
Thank you, Jane. Truly interesting what's coming next for the Carbon Finance Collab. Up next, we have Timothy Rand from Mercy Corps Ventures, who has been a thought partner and a great CIFAR Alliance member almost from the beginning as well. Tim, thank you for joining us and sharing about the climate venture investment collab. And you guys as well as investors in the space, it'd be amazing if you could share what trends and opportunities and challenges are you looking at in the climate venture investment space, and what do you see in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nelly, and thanks to be here today. So many familiar faces and co-conspirators and friends and partners. So thank you for convening this again. So yeah, within the climate investing space broadly, I say broadly because it is a very broad space, and I think everybody's still trying to figure out exactly the taxonomy of what's included, what might not be. And thanks to a lot of BFA's work in this working group, we're moving towards that. But generally speaking, the pullback in the venture capital markets has, not affected different markets we work in uniformly. Africa just recorded its downtrend in this quarter in terms of capital being deployed there, but it's still as high as it's been in 2020. So generally speaking, capital is still flowing. Latin America's had a huge pullback, and Asia continues to kind of push ahead as normal. Climate tech has been immune to this, which has been really interesting. It's kind of the belle of the ball at the moment. But within climate tech, what we're seeing is that there's certain areas that are perpetually underfunded, such as anything touching agriculture, given the long return periods or long holding periods and low IRRs and so forth. And so it's one of these areas where, at least us as a fund and then within a working group member, how are we directing capital at the earliest stages of innovation for these founders, building in areas that I think the wider capital markets just don't quite understand the opportunity for? We choose to have an optimistic view of what our founder is going to be building, for 2030, when there's a very different environment, very different types of agriculture needs to be done, very different types of supply chains that have to have different types of resiliency. We think those are going to be the most valuable startups, the most impactful startups, but the capital markets aren't there yet. It's kind of like fintech in Africa in 2013, 2014. And so bridging that gap is really key. That's what our working group is trying to do. I think that is fun at the moment. There's a few areas we're particularly excited about. The first are companies that are really looking at all the data in these markets that's typically very fragmented, very siloed, and how do you kind of coalesce that so that others can build on top of it and make make all sorts of really useful products and services on top of it. So this touches the carbon markets, touches regenerative ag, touches climate smart ag, a whole range of areas that are really core to climate adaptation. I think the second area we're really excited about is distributed energy. What are the different ways energy can be delivered that kind of breaks the current paradigm? Are we going to build LPG pipes across Africa to power cooking fuel in homes? Are we going to have grids that or different types of supply chains for gasoline and other types of grids that power the EVs? I think that's all being built, and there's a tremendous number of opportunities there. And again, a way to reimagine how these supply chains work to kind of control for what exists in countries, as well as macroeconomic or macro and socio-political economic instability. I think the third area is, again, one that we are particularly attuned to, but still wanting to crowd in more investors, and really anything related to the future of supply chains, and particularly agriculture, is just perpetually still underinvested. We're still not seeing investors kind of willing to accept the risk, the IRR expectations. We're not quite yet seeing that wave of founders. We're waiting for TECA, I think, soon. That are really building these future of agricultural supply chains, especially local for food security purposes. So that's one we're very excited about. It has a huge adaptation layer to it, but one we think there'll be a lot of really interesting companies and founders stepping up to over the coming months and years.
Thank you, Tim. That's inspiring. And if you want to hear more about this, please join the breakout room that's going to be led by Mylis Carraro in Catalytic Capital in just a few minutes. So next runner-up is Benjamin Masota from the co-lead of the Climate Metrics Collab for Adaptation and Resilience, CARMET. Thank you, Ben, for being here. This is a very complex topic that you guys are dealing with. And so an easy question for you. What challenges have you guys found in identifying actionable metrics about how micro and small businesses experience adaptation and resilience? And is there any best practices of existing frameworks that you guys have learned and drawn from to develop these metrics? You're mute. Or I can't hear you.
Now we have sound, right?
There we go.
Clearly my first Zoom call of the day in Boston. Sorry about that. Thanks for having us here. I wanted to recognize also joining us on the call today are Marco Del Rio and Rashmi Jawahar from UNIDO, who are co-collaborators, co-leads of our working group. And the two of them actually really deserve the lion's share of the credit for what we produced last year, which is a draft review of all the frameworks that are out there. And you asked for some simple takeaways. I think the state of play in metrics is not that. We have really broad agreement on one principle, which is that we need measures of what I would refer to as reach in the evaluation world. That is, how many individuals are direct recipients of investment whose lives are tangibly and measurably improved by that investment, and how many customers do they have that meet the same definition. And that is called by many different things. They're called beneficiaries, they're called reach, they're called, even with race to resilience, the quantitative approach to resilience measurement. And I think because the topic is so sprawling and involves so many different approaches to building adaptation and resilience, the minute that we depart from counting heads, there are many different approaches to choose from. And there's two ways to look at it. One is we have an embarrassment of riches. We have so many different things that we can choose from to measure adaptation and resilience. And the other is that there's this really dangerous divergence between what we mean by the very terms adaptation and resilience within one industry vertical, one type of climate risk, one geography, one population. And so where we are now is we feel like we understand what are the best frameworks out there that one could choose from. It's much broader. It's vastly broader than CIFAR. And so this year, the theme of our work, as you've probably heard me say before, if you've been on these calls, is to scope in a little bit and to think about this intersection of tech, finance, and populations that are in some way vulnerable to climate change, specifying what we mean by those, and then looking for sets of metrics that obey 3 simple principles. Only 3, shouldn't be that hard. But actually in practice, it's very difficult to do this. We're looking for things that are actionable, that are solving a real problem for investors. And by actionable, I don't just mean that they're credible or that they are valid metrics of improved adaptation and resilience. I actually mean that they're solving a gap in the market for investment, which means investors find them relevant. I don't mean that you have to be an effective altruist and only invest on the basis of what gets you the best bang for the buck. But I do want to know from the investor's perspective, what role these metrics play in decision making. Sorry about the noise outside. I don't know if it's coming through, but I have like a fire engine going by and it's really loud where I am. The metrics need to be actionable in some way, and it's not clear that it's always 3 units of this for $1 of that transaction that we're talking about. But I do want to know what the investor's problem looks like and why the metrics are actionable. And indeed, that oftentimes means that they need to travel well. We need metrics that are equally useful across different investments in different settings. Second up, they need to be scalable, because at the early stage companies that oftentimes BFA works with, our view of the world is new companies may just be developing their projects, just attacking beachhead markets. It can't be expensive to measure this well. So we may need to live with second best metrics that are scalable instead of first best metrics that are most credible. And finally, they need to be really relevant. I guess I've talked about that already a little bit, but we need to intrinsically understand why this metric for resilience is also touching on climate adaptation and resilience. And I'll just stop there and say, if we can get those 3 things, actionable, scalable, and relevance, we're going to be way ahead of the game. So we're looking for concrete instances this year, developing case studies, rather than adding yet another framework to the selection that are out there already. And recognize several of you on the call have already indicated your interest in either supporting that work or participating and putting your own work forward for measurement. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ben. And for all of you interested in following up on this topic, please join the breakout room that will be led by Wendy Chamberlain on user centricity, where we are combining the work of the elevated voice of the affected user and the metrics and measurement working group. So our next runner-up is also an innovation, a complex topic on climate resilient agriculture, our CRAG collab. First, congratulations on your recently finished white paper on climate resilient agriculture. And Graham, thank you for joining and sharing with us what you have been working on and what challenges and potentials have you guys seen in the use of digital technology for climate resilience agriculture?
Thanks, Nelly. Yeah, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge my co-chair, Ashley, from the GSMA, and also particularly David Ferrand, who helped us build the white paper and did a tremendous job. And what we did essentially was look at, and of course, climate resilient agriculture is an enormous topic with a massive, literature. So we have a literature review paper that is sits behind the white paper, but it's not really sort of. We don't expect anyone not suffering from deep insomnia to read it. And what we did was we looked inter alia at the number of tech startups along the length of agricultural value chains. And even back in 2017, almost every step of an agricultural value chain, there was a startup. Now, how good they were and so on is a different question perhaps, but there were startups both in India and Africa. And what we concluded was that there are 3 key interrelated topics that we need to address. And I think that they're important for the work of CIFAR generally, but particularly for climate resilient agriculture. The first is the integration and coordination amongst participants in agricultural value chains. At the moment, they're very fragmented, and particularly at the smallholder farmer level. So there's a big opportunity there to leverage the digital revolution to improve integration and coordination. The second is to focus on diffusion of innovation. Right now, we know that for all those wonderful tech startups, actually uptake and usage, particularly amongst poorer, more vulnerable communities, and smallholder farmers often fall into that category, is very low. And I think this is a challenge for all of us in CIFAR to really begin to get a hold of what are the barriers to uptake and usage, and what are the enablers, and how do we address those. And those two are leading to the financing of agricultural, the transformation of agri-food systems. And those are, I think, at the moment anyway underfunded, because everyone is frightened of the covariant risk that tends to sit in agriculture. But furthermore, that covariant risk is, of course, amplified by climate change. Now, when we're talking about financial transformation, we're not just talking about traditional financial inclusion, for want of a better description. We're not just talking about the formal financial sector. We're looking at, obviously, embedded finance, but also informal and community-based finance, and also state or international finance. And with the loss and damage funds and so on, this is going to be really key. Now, the question is going to be, how can technology help smallholder farmers access all four types of financial services? So that's what we're focused on. And we're building a sort of action research program to look at those. And that will have four cross-cutting themes. First of all, looking at locally led programs to ensure that digital technologies respond to local needs and opportunities. Then rigorous impact assessment. So we're going to be hopefully working with Ben and his team on that. And then mechanisms for accelerated learning across regions and sectors. So the dissemination and really pay attention to that. And I think that that's something that's really important in the context of CIFAR and a great strength of the Alliance. And then finally, advocacy to drive change. One of the things that I think is particularly interesting is that in India, because of its advanced digital ecosystem, a lot of that integration, a lot of the diffusion is already beginning to happen. So, for example, my little organization is involved in what they're calling digital farmers, digital farming system in India, and also the AgriStack in the state of Bihar. And this is looking at pulling together, a full stack, looking at who owns land, what the quality of the soil, the soil health is, what crops they're growing, inputs, et cetera, with view to having a holistic view of that farm, and then providing very, very targeted inputs and assistance with smart agriculture. So I think there's going to be opportunities to learn from Asia into Africa, and indeed vice versa. And it's something that I think that, again, the CIFAR Alliance is particularly well positioned to facilitate. And if you want to know more, then join me in Innovation for Scale.
Thank you, Graham. Yes, join Graham on the breakout session for Innovation for Scale. And up next is Tyler Ferdinand, who will speak about recently launched Climate Smart Product Innovation Hub, who he co-leads along with Ali from the Center for Inclusive Growth. And this is a bit different from the other collabs that are focused on innovation through product management and design. And how do you plan to make this tangible to the external audience and set yourself up to move into a year of action, Tyler? This is the after year for CIFAR.
Exactly. Thanks, Nelly. And I think that I'm not going to say stole, but I think that David added to my thunder a little bit, because he talked about some of the exciting outputs that we are going to have this year. But actually, I'm in South Africa at the moment. We're about to do our first or inaugural Climathon, which is going to be next weekend, which David was referencing. And that's been a really interesting and exciting experience for me, as I think also for Ali. And I'll shout out to Julian and Carolina as well, who are part of the working group, because I've had a chance to talk to almost about 40 young entrepreneurs in this local innovation ecosystem. Brilliant entrepreneurs that are mostly either focused on financial services or climate. But the thing that I'm picking up is that there's a bit of a struggle for the climate people to think about what to do with financial services in fintech, and vice versa with the financial service entrepreneurs that are, what do we do about the climate problem? How do we actually design these for climate adaptation? So that's part of the focus of these boot camps or climathons that we're doing, is kind of using them as a live learning event, but also to start to help with these local innovation ecosystems to figure out what to actually do. And to your point, Nelly, the reason that I think that this group is a little bit different is because there's a lot of different thematic working groups about climate smart agriculture and so on. This is really about the how to do this, so more about the climate smart product development and design. And one of the ways that we're planning on doing this and making this more tangible is to inform more people about this emerging area and get people thinking about how they can be considering building in climate smart components to their product development through a gallery of products. And when I say gallery of products, this is essentially an online microsite that's going to have different types of products that are going to be categorized, and kind of providing a deeper dive of what those look like, what they do well, the sustainable business models, the data, the tech, et cetera, just so that feels a little bit more tangible. And the plan right now is to showcase that hopefully in an accessible, high-level way at COP28, and to start to spur deeper conversations and pique investor interest in this space. So I encourage anyone that's familiar with any types of products that you would like to see in the gallery, please reach out to Ali or I. But in addition to that, we're also doing some teardowns, so a deeper dive into the tech component. So any of the techie people in the room, I would keep an eye out for that. And then also developing a toolkit. So the actual nitty-gritty of how you go from the beginning to actually implementing the product and having users and getting traction in the field. David and I were brainstorming a little bit today about how to maybe leverage some AI or a chatbot into that toolkit program. But yeah, so in summary, this year is kind of a year of evidence and tools, as I think like the baby sister group of the working group, since we're one of the newest. But hopefully moving into a year in action once we actually have established what is a climate smart product and how do we actually do climate smart product development.
Thank you, Tyler.
Just a reminder, we are in the spirit of lightning. I sense a lot of energy towards the breakouts and getting into some of these deeper conversations. So we've got a couple more to go. So if we get lightning through them, keep us on schedule. Thanks.
Almost there, Mr. Fripp. We'll speed it up. So next is very interesting topic that will be led by Wendy Chamberlain, who will also lead a breakout room on elevating the voice of the affected people. You guys have very interesting outcomes coming soon. Could you briefly share some of the biggest challenges facing those most impacted by climate change, and how financial services can play a role in building their climate resilience, as you guys have discussed in your collab?
Cool, thanks so much. And Jesse, I'll talk at 1.25 speed, which is how I listen to my audiobooks too. So the Elevating Voice of the Affected Peoples Working Group is really centered on the fact that we think those most impacted by climate shocks and stresses should have their stories told and bring them to the table of these really exciting conversations that we're having within CIFAR to say, this is all well and good that we are investigating this, exploring this, trying this out, but does it work for those most impacted? And what needs to be solved for in order for that to be true? So this working group is co-led by myself and Graham Wright, and it reflects the work of MSC, as well as CGAP and CGAP's partnership with FSD Africa, FCDO, Dakotas, and MSC as well. And we also have some of our colleagues from BFA joining. And our goal simply is to say, really, what do we need to better understand about how people are impacted by climate shocks and stresses What are we learning from the research that they say they need? And even more importantly, how can we get most proximate to them to get the insights from them? And there's some things that we are learning that may sound kind of obvious to you all, but I want to bring them to the conversation. One is that climate change seems to be sectorally agnostic. So when we start talking about climate change and the climate risks people experience, it's no longer just about financial risks, it's also about health risks, it's about limiting access to education, it's about increased barriers for women accessing financial services and other resources. It's about an exacerbation of many barriers that people face that climate shocks and stresses make all the harder. And so as we talk about what people need, that means we need to look at solutions that go beyond just responding to the immediate event that people experience, but also the things that they need finance to do for them. So maybe that's to pay for school fees in an emergency. Maybe that's to pay for the climate-related illness that somebody has acquired. Maybe it's to address the lack of infrastructure that impedes somebody being able to get to market, which allows them to get money to pay for their necessary life expenses. So those are the kinds of conversations we have, and those are the kinds of conversations we think are important to bring to these to the CIFAR table. We also are bringing to the table a slight reminder that the financial inclusion barriers that existed before we were all talking about climate change still exist, especially for women, and we need to still address them. And they are so painful to address, yet this is all the more reason for us to tackle this, because doing so will enable these products and services to be more impactful for those most impacted. The other thing is just a reminder too that women and girls suffer disproportionately due to climate shocks and stresses. And so when we talk about adaptation and again the solutions that we are excited about seeing, we really want to understand how those products and services will overcome the challenges that women and girls face due to these barriers being exacerbated. So I'm going to wrap up my TED Talk and say, please come to my little session. We can talk more. I want to hear more about what people are doing around this, because last thing I'll say is it's so critical that we have more voices in the room than are in the room right now. So we'd love to hear how organizations are thinking about bringing those voices to the table, because we really need to make sure these solutions work for them. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Wendy. It's always inspiring to learn from you. So next up is Neil from PayPal for Blockchain for Resilience. The report on the landscape report on Blockchain for Resilience is coming out very soon. So tell us, Neil, could you share some of the impact areas and that were analyzed as part of this research effort? And how do you think this illustrates the potential for blockchain to address climate-related challenges in emerging markets?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nelly. And thank you also for your co-leading efforts, this innovative working group. And yeah, this is the first of its kind report that's under construction. And there are several key factors that we are examining through a set of 52 stakeholder interviews that we conducted. And so the primary ones are in terms of, can be imagined in terms of opportunities and gaps. And the gaps include lack of financing, navigating the regulatory landscape, which you can imagine is constantly changing, and development of new products because of the risk associated with blockchain. So these are the gaps. And then the opportunities include investing in blockchain literacy, enhancing the user experience, and conducting a stock take of regulatory barriers that could help in development of new products. And so through a set of 9 initiatives, the blockchain report examines cases for emerging markets. And 2 applications that I could give you a preview of are one in carbon finance. So currently the carbon registries are constraining in that they lack transparency. That has been examined in multiple reports and review articles that you might have seen. And they also have a set standard in terms of 1 verified carbon unit being 1 ton of emissions. So the attempt is to break down those in form of tokens in carbon finance. So that's one application. The other emerging application that we are just currently scratching the surface is in universal climate insurance. And with the new working group being started, that's certainly an area of interest where the two collabs can partner. One interesting aspect that this report also covers is the gender lens. And Wendy was highlighting the gender gap. It's even more starker in the blockchain for resilience world, because just 5% of all blockchain users in the world are women. And of course, this also is reflected in the executive leadership, similar number in underrepresentation of women there. So this report also examines how inclusivity and gender lens can be incorporated in the blockchain for resilience climate world.
Thank you, Neil. So if you want to hear more about the report, please join our brown bag next Thursday, May 18th at 9 a.m. Eastern, where we'll be presenting the report in a panel. So we have two more before Jesse mutes my microphone. The first one is, which are both very exciting. The first one, Nick, on the universal climate insurance. Is Nick in the room? I cannot see him.
I am right here, Nelly.
Hi, Nick. So tell us, with this very interesting idea that David was already teasing us about, what inspired the team to propose the idea of a universal climate insurance, and how do you see this coming through?
Yeah, so the aim of the Universal Climate Insurance was to build an alternative to the loss and damage fund, and to leverage on technology and partnership with the private sector. I mean, the working group was formed out of a concept that David came up with, and a few other colleagues who are represented in this call. And I'm co-leading it with Kelvin Massingham from FSD Africa. So so far we've received funding from MetLife Foundation, generous funding from MetLife Foundation to help us to build on the ideas of this concept, and we want to just develop that into a tangible value proposition, and develop a common understanding among all the members of what we want to achieve before COP28, which is I think later in December. And during that session, we want to showcase. We still haven't really got into what that showcase will be, but we are actually starting to work towards thinking around the concept and the pilot that we will start working on in the near future. So far we've worked on, we kicked off the working group on 12th of April, and we had a follow-up session on 27th. That was last week. And we had a very good turnout from different members. Some of you represented here. There was a lot of excitement in the room, and we had people from diverse backgrounds and experience who expressed their hopes in, their hopes and excitements in terms of being part of this initiative, and their eagerness to see it working working and showcased at COP28. So we started off with a vision sprint, which is to sort of agree on what the common vision is and what we want to present. And we want to build that into, as I said, tangible concepts, which is centered around connecting the affected with the committed with the affected, and having some sort of platform in between that helps to support whatever we're trying to achieve. And particularly, the most important, of course, is to have the flow of funds that will reach the affected world. So we'll continue to build this over the next few months as we run up to COP28. And we are really excited by the turnout, and also by the interest that is being generated by the different members of the working group.
Thank you, Nick. This is going to be our very first innovation coming out of the collab, so very excited about that. And last but not least, Shirley, thank you so much for being here. I know you've had an amazing year. 7 new ventures came out of the first Teca wave in East Africa. And can you share a little bit about how these 7 new launched companies contribute to the field, and what impact do you anticipate they will have, and what's coming next for Teca?
Yeah, so great to be part of this session, learning what everyone else is doing. Great opportunity. Thanks so much. So in terms of the 7 companies, it's been a great year working with 30 innovators who represent the 7 companies that I'm going to talk about. In terms of impact that they will have, I was thinking of three key elements. And number one is that these companies are equipping communities with tools to bolster their livelihoods. So we're talking about those communities that are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. For instance, I'll give you an example of one of the companies, which is VUA, that is providing financial solutions to fishermen who for 6 months in the year have a very low income, little to no income because of low fishing or low catch seasons. At the same time, they're providing financing tools that enable these fishermen to get tools for sustainable fishing, which at the end of the day protects the coral reefs and protects the environment from which they depend on. Another one is Wezesha, which is making aquaculture sustainable, affordable, and accessible to fishing communities. So instead of relying on wild catch or fish stocks that are dwindling, they're able to embark on aquaculture in an accessible and affordable manner through leasing arrangements with them, and as well as providing the required technical expertise, hence lowering those barriers of entry into aquaculture for them. Those are just but 2 of examples around those tools for bolstering livelihoods. Another way I would say that they are impacting communities is enabling local communities to be stewards, environmental stewards, which is a key factor in conservation or effective conservation. We have the likes of Registry and Conservate, and these 2 are building an MRV platform, which is more of monitoring, reporting, and verification platforms that ultimately will link community-based conservation with carbon markets and other resource pools to power their initiatives around sustainable conservation. This is just but an example. So that combined with this first wave, we were focusing on the blue economy. And I thought I should just highlight that this is one of the most neglected or overlooked industries. We had to do a lot of education around what the blue economy is, yet it supports about 70 million jobs across Africa and is a key strategy for the African Union. So those are just some of the impact that we expect will flow out of the companies that we have recently launched. And I wanted to invite CIFAR members, should you want these companies to join us for our Tech Demo Day. The companies will be putting forward what they've been working on in the last 3 months. We were focusing on working on a problem solution fit, and they'll be seeking support to get a product market fit. So additional support from CIFAR members. And some of them or rather you'll see that some of them already have paying customers, which is testament to the needs that they're serving. So please welcome, it's on the 17th of May. Please, should you have not received an invite, please join us or reach out and I'll send you an invite for that particular event. Thanks.
Thank you, Shirley. So that's a wrap, Mr. Fripp, and over to you. Thank you all for sharing. We could continue discussing this for hours, but hopefully this was an inspiring teaser for you guys to continue the conversation and reach out to us and come to our events and to join the breakout sessions coming next.
And we're going to discuss, yes, hours. We're going to start with discussions in minutes. Just wanted to give a shout out to all of the, a quick visual shout out to all the wonderful partners. Many were mentioned here, but you know, it takes a village. I think going back to going fast and far together, and the collabs have been really extraordinary, as you've heard, an extraordinary part of the CIFAR Alliance journey. But moving along in that journey, we wanted to take 10 minutes to make space for you to sort of self-select into the kind of the pillar areas where the collabs kind of aggregate themselves and hear from some of our terrific leaders, some of whom you've heard from already. Maëlys, you haven't heard from yet, but you need to. Maëlys will be leading the Catalytic Capital breakout. Wendy will be leading the user centricity breakout, and Graham will be leading the Innovation for Scale breakout. We get 10 minutes roughly. We'll draw you back in with our superpower Zoom capabilities. So this, have that conversation. We'll ask the breakout leads to come with a single headline. And what happened in that breakout? Headline, newspaper, pick your, El País, whatever, newspaper you want to write that headline for. And then we'll move on because we have a very distinguished guest speaker partner who will be closing us out this morning with a call to action. So I would invite you all to prepare yourselves to choose your breakouts, and then I think Carmen, if you could direct us to the breakouts, you may be able to self-select into that. I'll stop sharing.
Jesse, one question.
Yes.
Since we have 15 minutes, do you want us to come back?
We're going to come back a little faster. Yeah, because we had a very rich conversation with the collabs, but we do want to make sure we try to land on time if we can, if that's possible. I can pick on people too.
Other than we
Thanks,
need because continue this conversation, hopefully in the working group and everyone can join. But I think when it comes to catalytic capital, and I'll speak very frankly here, like there's always the same themes and questions come up. So what financial instruments are needed when, at what stages of growth of startups or innovators more generally? Is it just equity? Can we think about debt? Like how do we blend more effectively and pool on sources of capital across the spectrum, right, in ways that can support the entrepreneurs in all of their needs, especially in difficult sectors, climate resilience being one of them, particularly ag. And then separately, capital is not all that's needed. So what pools of concessional capital might support more of the venture building needs and the capacity building needs and so on. Thirdly, how do we go towards a better quantification of impact that actually attracts investors, not detracts when it comes to the whole ESG sphere, and also it is appropriate for entrepreneurs and actually feasible, like to measure and implement at different points in their journeys. So, and to me, there's a lot of capital moving, catalytic and concessional capital right now, but somehow it's still not ending in the hands of the entrepreneurs that need it most, and they're still excluded from it. So the key question is, what is still on the way? What is actually blocking? How do we as an alliance of finance for climate can play a role together as a united voice to unlock it and actually, direct it so that it flows where it's most needed? So yeah, that's a summary.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Melis. Really appreciate that and look forward to the continued conversations and the collabs and working groups. Wendy, Graham, headlines?
Yeah, we need to do more to get proximate to the people who are most impacted and to hear from them about how they are being impacted. And then we need to take on, no one said the word hairy, but the hairy challenges. How do we make, for example, instant payments frictionless for those most impacted? How do we look at community-based solutions? How do we tackle these significant barriers? That's all. It's a tall order.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good banner headline there. Thanks so much, Wendy. Very nice. Graham, your headline?
Yeah, we were just finishing the introductions. I thought I was being, all social and decent and so on. Usually I'm in a rush and don't bother with them. So yeah, no, we agonized about the limitations of uptake and usage, which and I think two quick takeaways. One, some of the sort of social media, particularly WhatsApp, is probably a very important gateway to low-income and vulnerable communities. And second, and I would add to that a swear word, Facebook. And then I think the other observation that occurred to me as we were discussing is that access to financial services, if they are meaningful and relevant to those communities, is the other key sort of enabler or hook to actually get people to download and use these technologies.
Wonderful.
But we ran out of time.
Well, the more time coming. Everyone, hopefully, in your groups will immediately follow up to connect, to be part of the collabs, and to participate in this journey. And I'm very pleased on that theme to pivot to a very distinguished guest that we're very pleased to have with us today. We mentioned the journey. This has been a journey. This is our third, as David mentioned, our third spring annual kickoff. But before the road was even made, one of our 5 founding partners, and one of the very first and most engaged founding partners was PayPal. And PayPal has been with us all along, together with Race to Resilience, WRI, CGAP, Better Than Cash Alliance, and of course, BFA. But I'm very delighted to invite Tyler Spalding, Senior Director for Corporate Affairs and the Global Head of Social Innovation from PayPal, who's with us here today, to land us with some thoughts and reflections from his perspective and PayPal's perspective on that journey, and perhaps a call to action, since that seems to be our theme for the day. So Tyler, over to you.
Thanks, Jesse, for that really generous introduction. I feel just so enormously privileged to be a part of this group and to be able to learn. Learning happened in just this 90-minute session, and every time I feel I get to engage with the CIFAR community, that is a constant. And so thanks for having me. Thanks for also having PayPal as a partner since the very beginning and going forward. Really appreciate all of the work of the CIFAR team and this whole community. I think I'll pick up on a thread that I know Jackson mentioned and others throughout the call, which is in this space, it's obviously not hard to feel a little bit doom and gloom and pessimistic about the future and the state of the world. But what I love most about this community of practitioners and partners is we're choosing not to allow ourselves to go down that path, that we are really focused on actionable areas of impact in places where we can come together and drive forward new innovations and impact on a global scale, and to take a more hopeful stature and say, there are a lot of things that are happening in the world, but together we can come together and we can help communities around the world become more resilient in the face of these changes that are happening across the world. So I really appreciate all of the different work of the working groups and the opportunities within those working groups for all of us to get involved. And I think all of us can do more. I think from a membership perspective, I think we can all help take a proactive role in the CIFAR governance going forward, and really establishing this as a long-standing community of practice that is going to drive innovation and impact for a long time. I think for our contributors, thinking about the leadership role that you can play to continue to drive forward the work of the working groups and form new relationships, think differently about what your organization can do and learn. I think also for our observers, think more about how you and your organization can become a part and become more formally involved. Jesse and Nellie and others are here, and all of us who are working with CIFAR here to help think about that with you and to formalize that relationship. And I think for all of us, no matter how and when and where we enter into this conversation, we all have a lot more that we can offer in leveraging our companies and our organization's core capabilities to make a real difference. Every little bit makes a difference, and every way that we are learning and contributing together can inspire others to get involved. And I think all of us around this virtual table, have networks and communities that we can also draw into this work. It is an inherently collaborative approach that we've built here. And we're only going to be more successful by bringing in more partners and collaborators into this work. And so I would encourage everyone to do so. I'm excited about the roadmap for this year and beyond. Think that there's a lot of opportunity for us in the lead up to COP28 to accelerate this work and come into COP28 with a lot of learnings, reports, knowledge products, opportunities for collaboration. And so to the extent that PayPal can support in that even further, please do let us know. We have a good complement of representatives from the company here, and we're always open to chat further. So you'll have to excuse me, I pulled us over 2 minutes, but I'm just really inspired and excited about the future of this work and really look forward to working with all of you further. Thanks so much. Jesse, back to you.
Thank you so much, Tyler, for those inspiring words and a really powerful call to action. I think it was a great point to close on. So really appreciate that. And as you point out, into the ecosystem motif, those who have read Susan Simard's Finding the Mother Tree, it's that connective tissue that makes the ecosystem strong and healthy. And I think you called that out, very, very aptly, and that's what we're hoping that all of you can do. All of you who've joined, all of you who are already on this journey or have been for quite a long time. Nelly has dropped in as we close out a Minty challenge or prompt into the chat. We'd love, your newspaper headline, the main takeaway from this conversation. What excites you the most? What happens next in your news world? We'll share that along with the run-up show deck, the recording, follow-up notes to all who registered. Would love for you to join us in this journey as Tyler prompted and challenged all to do. Follow us on LinkedIn, find us on the webpage, reach out to Nelly and I if you want to be connected with the collabs. Brown bags every month. Next one's coming up May 18th, 9 a.m. That's the Blockchain for Climate Resilience Landscape Report. I would be remiss not to call out some of the beautiful artwork you'll see in the deck. That is AI generated from language that emerged from this group, the member group and participants in the CIFAR Alliance. So really cool stuff. Shows us another unique angle of the AI revolution. And with that, I would just thank everyone for your time. Thank our guest speakers. Thank our members. Founders, funders, participating members, collab leaders, and not least all who joined us today for this wonderful conversation. Let it continue and let it move onward into action. Thanks again, everyone.